All right, X-linked recessive inheritance traits with pedigree charts. So, some notes worth mentioning. Affected mothers must have affected sons. So, what does an affected mother even look like? So, this is recessive, which means you need to have two of the same alleles. Okay, so if we look at the affected mother in here, that would be this one. So, that would be X. Let's use A's. Little a, X, little a. Okay, that would be affected mother. An affected father would be X little a, and of course he has a Y for the second chromosome. So then he has one X. And this is why it gets a little tricky. An unaffected would be the unshaded, so that would be X big A, and then a Y for the male, and then circles are females, as you know, and that would be X big A, and then there's two possibles. It could be X big A, or you could have X big A, X little a. Okay, so it can get a little tricky because females, if they're unaffected, can have two possible genotypes. Males are the easy ones for once in our life. And we have X big A and a Y, or X little a and a Y. And then if you're an affected female, she has to be homozygous recessive. Okay. They can skip generation, just like any of the recessives, the autosomal recessive. You can have skipping of generations. So, in other words, you can have an affected parent that gives rise to an unaffected, and then two unaffected can then give rise to a sneaker affected. And it's because there's carriers in here. Okay, they can carry the actual X-linked recessive trait without knowing, and then they can give it to a baby. All right. Males only have one X, like we already looked at. Males, X and then a Y. The Y just gives them a penis, makes them a male. Usually more males are affected on the pedigree, so that's probably one of the key takeaways, is if you look at a pedigree and you have to figure out what the inheritance pattern is, the first thing you should kind of look at, if you don't know what the inheritance pattern is how many males are there? There's one, two, three, four, five. And then for females, we have one, two, three. 5 to 3. I don't know if that's significant, but it's enough to make you think it's probably X-linked recessive. Okay, so if you have more males, it's probably going to be X-linked recessive. Now, if you have an affected daughter must have an affected father. So here's an affected daughter here, and she has an affected father. Nowhere else do we have an example of that. So, but if you have an affected daughter, she has to have the affected father. Let's take a look at why that is. So this guy here, he would have to have the little a, okay, and then he has the Y. Now he always gives his Y to his sons, and his daughters always get the one X that he has. So she is always going to have that X with a little a from him. No matter what, doesn't matter how many daughters he has, they will always have that X with a little a. So any affected daughter, which means they have to be affected, they have to have X little a, right? Because we said that right here. And one of the X's has to come from the dad. So if he is unaffected, then you can't actually have an affected daughter. So look at this one right here. So he's not affected. So his genotype would be X big A Y, and the daughter is going to have that X big A. And as soon as you have a big A, you can't have the disorder. All right. So unaffected fathers cannot have affected daughters. All right.